So there's some representations of the idea of the original. It's not, this isn't all Adam. This is an old Chinese symbol. I think it's Faxianua, although I think I have the pronunciation wrong, but it's really cool. See the snakes down here? They're kind of like a DNA symbol, which I find very interesting. And so that's the original cosmic serpent. That's sort of the potential out of which that emerges. And then that's the differentiation of that into male and female. And so that's like the predatory unknown. That's one way of thinking about it. That's the most fundamental conception of mankind, is something like that, is the predatory unknown. And then the bifurcation of that into the two fundamental cognitive elements of human perception, masculine and female. And you see the same thing here. This is Chinese, this is Egyptian, also extraordinarily old. It's the great serpent that underlies everything, bifurcating itself into Isis, queen of the underworld, and Osiris, Pharaoh, king of order. You see the same thing in an old alchemical symbol. I love this one. Looks quite a lot like the little thing that Harry Potter chases around, eh? Yeah, and that's not accidental, by the way, because the seeker is the thing that chases this, and the seeker that chases this and catches it wins. And that's a really old idea, and how the hell J.K. Rowling knew that, I cannot figure out, because that is a very, very archaic symbol, arcane symbol. On Google, it's called the round chaos. And the only reference to the round chaos that I can find on Google is on my webpage. And so I have no idea how Rowling came up with that. I mean, I know she looked at a lot of old texts, but the idea that if you play the metagame and you catch this, you win all the games is exactly right. And that's the motif for, what's the name of that? Quidditch. Yeah, so there's the potential. That's like the potential out of which God made the world at the beginning of time. And what emerges out of that is some kind of, that's the dragon, you know, in the dragon fight. That's partly the serpent that's in the Garden of Eden. And then that's the manifestation of masculine and feminine out of that. Potential, predatory unknown, masculine and feminine. It's like a single representation of the evolutionary history of human cognitive consciousness. So cool. And that's also an image of the ideal. It's the union of sun and moon, and it's this hyper creature, hermaphroditic, that's also the Adam and Eve that existed at the beginning of time before the fall. And it's the purpose of marriage. All of that as a sacrament, all of that in these images, it's just absolutely unbelievable what images can pack into them. And there's some more classical representations of Eve being extracted from Adam. And this is a cool line. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Well, see, someone who wrote that would only write that like that if they were surprised that they weren't ashamed, because why would you point it out otherwise? And so there's this intimation that of two things. Number one is there was a point in time when human beings were naked and they weren't ashamed of it. And there is a point of time, which is now, where they're naked and they are ashamed of it. And then the question is, well, what's the association with nakedness and shame? And that's also often given a sexual connotation in classic interpretations of the Adam and Eve story, because of its association with nudity, I presume. But I think it's a lot more complicated than that. So you think, I noticed my daughter, she probably won't be very happy that I'm revealing this in this lecture, but my daughter was never really concerned about nudity when she was a little kid. It was all the same to her one way or another. But my son, by the time he was 3, man, that kid was private. His bedroom door was shut, the bathroom door was shut. It was like, get the hell out of here. And that seemed to just happen of its own accord. And, you know, we had 2 children, and one was like that and the other one wasn't. I didn't think we had much to do with it at all, but it was really fascinating to watch that emerge in him. And, you know, that sense of self-consciousness does seem to emerge in children somewhere around the age of 3. And, you know, that's generally also when we start thinking that maybe having your baby wander around naked on a beach isn't exactly the best idea. There's something like that. The nudity in children is generally okay under some circumstances in public display. We seem to think of that as merely, it's acceptable. Why? I don't know. Why it stops being acceptable, well, that has something to do with sexuality, obviously, but it's a very complicated phenomena.